The unstoppable force meets the Mongols, horses, bows, conquering. They were the boogeymen of the 13th century. If you saw the Mongol horde, you had two options: run or prepare for a bad day. They swept across Asia and Europe, toppling empires. China, swallowed whole. Persia, done. Russia? You bet. They were the Michael Jordan of medieval warfare. But then there was Vietnam, or Dai Viet, a small kingdom in Southeast Asia, hot, humid, full of jungles and rivers, not the open steppes the Mongols were used to. Somehow the Vietnamese managed to do what so many others could not. They told the Mongols, thanks but no thanks, and made it stick. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. The Mongols couldn't compute it. The largest contiguous land empire in history from the Pacific to the Danube. Genghis Khan started it, and his descendants, like Kublai Khan, kept it going. They had a system, numbers, and terror. Experts at siege warfare, psychological warfare, and regular warfare. So when they set their sights on Dai Viet, everyone expected a quick conquest. But history threw a curveball. The Vietnamese knew their terrain, and had a spirit that proved more resilient than Mongol arrows. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was ideological. It showed that the unstoppable could be stopped. Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis, the Great Khan, Emperor of China, not a man accustomed to being told no. Imagine him in his palace pointing at a vast map. Mine, mine, also mine. But then his finger hovers over Dai Viet, a small yet strategically important piece. A gateway to the riches of Champa, and a thorn in his side. Kublai wasn't just a conqueror, he was an administrator. Dai Viet, by refusing to fully submit, was an affront. They'd paid tribute sometimes, but they dragged their feet. They didn't bow low enough for Kublai's liking. He sent envoys, made demands. The Vietnamese response was polite evasion. It must have driven Kublai bonkers. The Mongols had a straightforward policy: demand submission, unleash force, profit. It worked almost everywhere else. Dai Viet's evasion was a disruption to the Mongol world order. Kublai needed that region secured. He wanted those trade routes and control. The Vietnamese were a persistent, annoying problem. Kublai wasn't the type to let things slide. If diplomacy didn't work, he had other tools. Very large, very scary armies. The Vietnamese, led by the Tran dynasty, weren't fools. They knew they couldn't match the Mongols in a straight-up fight. So they played a different game. A game of patience, cunning, and making life miserable for the invaders. When Mongol envoys came with demands, the Vietnamese court was polite. They'd agree to some terms, then misunderstand others. They'd send tribute, but maybe not quite as much or on time. One story tells of Vietnamese officials tattooing "Death to the Mongols" on their arms. It was psychological warfare, Vietnamese style. They were saying, we might be small, but we are not scared. This wasn't just about military strategy, it was about national will. A key part of their strategy was the scorched earth policy. When the Mongol armies advanced, they found deserted villages and empty storehouses. The Vietnamese population would melt away into the mountains and jungles. The Mongols, used to living off the land, found themselves in a food desert. Their horses suffered in the heat and from lack of proper fodder. Disease spread through their ranks. The Vietnamese harassed the Mongols constantly. Guerrilla tactics, night raids, ambushes. They knew the terrain, the Mongols did not. Every foraging party was at risk. The psychological toll on the Mongol soldiers was immense. The Vietnamese were prepared to be incredibly audacious. The Great Mongol Diet planned starvation in the tropics, 1285. In 1285, Kublai Khan had enough of the diplomatic tap dance. He sent a massive army under his son Toghan. This was supposed to be the final showdown. The Mongols thought they'd crush the Vietnamese, capture the capital, and be done. Initially, things seemed to go their way. They captured Thang Long, but the city was empty. No people, no food, just a hollow prize. The Vietnamese had lured the Mongols deep into their territory. The empty houses, empty garden strategy was in full effect. The Mongols found themselves in a food desert. Their horses suffered, and disease spread. The Vietnamese harassed the Mongols constantly. Guerrilla tactics, night raids, ambushes. The Mongols' discipline began to fray, their commanders grew desperate. The Mongols decided to retreat. The Vietnamese hounded them every step of the way. Famous battles saw the Vietnamese inflict heavy casualties. The Great Mongol invasion ended with a whimper. It was a stunning victory for Dai Viet. They're back! The Mongols double down, 1287 preview. After the disaster of 1285, Kublai Khan didn't reconsider his Vietnam policy. The defeat was a massive blow to Mongol prestige. An emperor who had conquered the Song dynasty couldn't subdue Dai Viet? Unacceptable. Kublai doubled down. He decided to teach the Vietnamese a lesson. The failure of 1285 wasn't just a military loss, it was a personal insult. His son, Toghan, had been humiliated. The Mongol aura of invincibility was dented. Kublai was furious and determined. He began preparations for another invasion. He would pour more resources into this venture. He was going to crush Viet. This time, there would be no mistakes. The Vietnamese knew the Mongols wouldn't give up. They had won a great victory, but the war wasn't over. They had shown incredible resilience. The 1285 campaign had proven their strategy effective. They had faced down the world's most fearsome army, but the storm clouds were gathering again. The stage was set for a third round. The Mongols were coming back in 1287. The upcoming invasion promised to be another epic clash.